country. We usually use that phrase when we're trying to say, I've got a right to do something. Quite often it's something that we shouldn't be proud of at all. But the idea of freedom is extremely important. Next week, as a nation, we'll celebrate Independence Day. And it's an important day. It's time to think about the freedoms that we have received as a nation. Early in the history of this country, long before it became a nation, it was the case that many fled from nations all around seeking freedom. And many of them were seeking freedom to worship God the way they wanted to. They had come from countries where their freedom to worship had been so bound in following the way that the king or the ruler decided, and it was not possible to just read the Bible and to study and to pray and to worship the way that one wanted to. And so they fled, often at the risk of life and limb and the loss of everything they had, to come to a country where they knew the living would be rugged in order to be able to worship God as they desired. Our country then was established on that principle of freedom of religion. Now, a lot of other freedoms are involved. We have a Bill of Rights, and there are many different freedoms that have been laid out for us. I suspect that anyone who is watching would say that we live in a time when those freedoms seem to be going away, that many of them are being taken just a little bit at a time. It intrigues me that in the New Testament there was a movement to take away the freedoms of Christians. There were many who desired to go back to a time when there were laws and regulations about everything that they ought to follow. When Paul wrote the book of Galatians, it was a strong plea for them to hold on to the freedoms. When he said, though we or an angel from heaven preach any other gospel to you than that which we have preached unto you, let him be accursed. We sometimes read that to say that if someone comes along and doesn't accept everything that we've tried to bind on them, then they're going to be accursed. But it's interesting that what was really going on was that Paul said, you've moved away from the grace of God and are making laws that God didn't intend you to make. And so the plea was, stand fast, therefore, in the freedom with which Christ has made you free. His plea was, don't let people make laws on you and bind them on you so that you might follow them. If you go back to the letter to the Colossians, he makes a similar plea to them. He said, there are those that will come along and say, don't touch, don't taste, don't have anything. You just stay away. Be ones that protect everything. And he said, that's foolish. Those things have to do with matters that perish with using, and they are of no benefit when it comes to one's spiritual development. Making more regulations, taking away the freedoms of people is not an honorable thing to do. It's interesting how many times in the last few years especially, we've been asked to choose between safety and freedom. And more, we as a nation have been saying, well, we'll give a little bit, and you can take away that freedom so that we'll be secure as a nation. I wonder, when we look back a few years from now, How many of us will wonder why in the world we were so willing to give up for freedom, for security? Because we're never going to be completely secure in this world. It wasn't intended to be. But when we give up the freedoms, especially when we give up our freedom to worship God as we understand the Bible teaches for us to do, when we allow people to bind things on us and to say we can or can't teach or preach or believe or follow God in some ways, even though we understand the Bible to teach that's the way to do it, then the reality is we will have lost the greatest thing about the nation, the freedom to be what God calls on us to be without any fear. Over the years, I think I've heard it over 1,000 times, when someone would pray, Lord, thank you that we today can gather together to worship you without any fear of molestation, without any fear that someone as an official of the government might come in and stop what we're doing. Stand fast in freedom. Don't allow your freedoms to be taken away a little bit at a time, especially the freedom to worship and serve God just as He teaches.